Alright, this is why we're going to be changing the rotors. You can see how badly pitted these rotors are. So even if you tried to machine these rotors, they would not come out too good. They would wind up with a problem. So rotors are so inexpensive, we're going to go ahead and we're going to replace them, and we're going to get started. So let me just show you a few things you want to check before you even get started. You're going to need a couple of tools. You're going to need some tool so you can hit with a hammer to try to loosen up these screws in here. A driver, a piece of metal, extension, whatever you have. You're going to need some sockets, a couple of screwdrivers, a tool to push the piston back in to recess it, and a couple of a ratchet and a hammer, and of course some brake caliper grease also, because you have to lubricate everything before you put it together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come back over here and we're going to check to make sure that these slide pins right here are working correctly. The problem with the slide pins is that they do freeze up. When they freeze up, the caliper doesn't slide the way it's supposed to. So we're going to check these to make sure that it's okay. So let me show you how we're going to go about doing that. What you do is you take a screwdriver. Let me just put this camera down and I'll show you. What you would do is you put a screwdriver in through the back of the brake pad here, and you get it in between the brake pad and the caliper, and you pry the caliper this way here. Let me show you. Alright, what you do is you go in here with the screwdriver and you put the screwdriver in through the back right here. You see how it sticks through right there? And then what you do is you just keep pressure on here. And what that does is it recesses the piston, which is down inside there. So we have to make sure that that recesses all the way back. Next thing we're going to do here is, after we push the pistons back in, we're going to check these sliders to make sure that they're sliding the way it's supposed to. And you see how this caliper moves back and forth right here nice and freely, top and bottom? See how it's moving back and forth fairly easy? That's a good thing. So we know these slide pins are not frozen, so we're going to be lubricating these before you put it back together. So let me get started, and I'll take you through it step by step. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the socket or tool or whatever you have, a piece of brass or anything, a brass drift, is you're going to go on here with this here, and you're going to hit it a couple times to loosen these screws up, because they can be very tight and hard to remove. If you do it like this, you hit it a couple of shots firmly, you'll be able to get these out without a problem. So let's get started. Try to light this the best I can for you. Hopefully that's gonna be okay. Put your drift on here, take it and hit it firmly. And then you should be able to get it out with a regular screwdriver. If it doesn't come out, just take the drift and hit it a couple of more times pretty firmly, and you should be able to get them out. If by chance you can't get them out, you can drill them out too. If you had to and they stripped out, you can drill right through here with a drill and drill it out until it's gone, and you'll be able to get it off that way. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the caliper from the car. There's two bolts in the back right here that hold the caliper onto the car. I'll get some light over here for you. You have one right here that we're going to take out, and you've got another one down on the bottom right here. We're going to take these off, and we're just going to relocate this to the side. Then we're going to take off the bolts that hold the mounting knuckle on. So let me do that and I'll show you. Just so you know, the bolts on the back of the caliper here, they're usually 12 millimeter, but sometimes they will vary also. both of them up. Don't throw these away because you're going to need to put these back on later on when you reassemble it. Then what you're going to do is you're going to relocate your caliper just out of the way so that it doesn't interfere with what you're going to do. You never want to leave a caliper dangling by the hose because you can always run into a problem, damaging it. Take a piece of wire or something, just slide it through the caliper and take it, and you just relocate it out of your way like that. Keeps it supported and it doesn't interfere with anything. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove those bolts in the back here that I was telling you about that hold the mounting bracket on. We're going to take out that one, and we're going to take out that one right there. Most of the time they're 17 millimeter, but let's grab a socket and we're going to give it a shot, and we'll get that out there. Hopefully that light doesn't bother you. All right, grab the 17 millimeter. When you try to get these out, you always do everything with an open hand. Don't do it with a closed fist, because if your hand slips and you hit something, you're going to destroy your knuckles. Always do it with an open fist. As you can tell, it gets pretty rusty. And we don't want to throw these bolts away, because we're going to need to put them back on there when we put the mounting bracket back on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the rotor off the car. In this case here, the rotor is fairly loose, so we're not really that bad. There's another way you can remove it. If the rotor is very tight, you can't get it off the car. One, you can bang the heck out of it with a hammer and get it to come off, because we're going to be replacing it anyway. But if you needed to keep the rotor and you wanted to take it off without damaging it, you can get a bolt and you screw a bolt in right through here. You screw it in, you tighten it down, and it pops the rotor right off the car. So that's something else you could do also. But in this case, we're throwing these away. We're going to get new ones because of their condition. So let me just show you one other thing. Another thing you have to make sure of too is that the face of the hub right here for the bearing is nice and clean. If you have any kind of rust or any kind of anything on there, you need to clean this off. Whether you use a razor blade, you use a piece of sandpaper, or whatever you use, you may have to clean this off. Make sure that surface is clean. All right, let me grab the brake pads, and I'm going to grab the rotor, and we're going to get this job put back together. So let me grab some stuff, and we'll come right back. Okay, a very important part of doing any brake job is going to be replacing the hardware, because the hardware gets, as you can see, it gets a little bit rusted, a little bit oxidized, and the brake pads don't slide the way they're supposed to. When this fits in here like this, or this way, this is supposed to slide nice and easily through here. If it's rusted or has any kind of damage to it, it's not going to slide properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to be replacing these. And if you buy a quality brake pad, a lot of times it comes with it. If not, get one, you'll save yourself a lot of headaches in the long run. All right, first thing you do is you just pry on a clip and it comes right off. Fairly easy to put them back on. but you have to check in here to make sure that there's no sediment or no rust or anything in there. If there is a little rust in here, you can take a file, a piece of sandpaper, whatever, and clean it off. And the reason you're going to clean it is because if you put your new brake pad in there and there's a little bit of rust or whatever on there, it's going to cause the shoe, the brake pad, to bind up a little bit. The way you put the new clip on is very simple. You just put the clip on the top like this. I'll try to show you. And it just pushes right over the top like that. And that's how it fits in there. These little tabs go on the inside, and this piece here pushes right over the top like that. Alright, we're going to do the same thing on this one here. Just get in here with a screwdriver and just pry it. Comes right off, real easy. Again, check to make sure there's no rust or anything inside here. It's clean, so we're not going to worry about this. Going to clean this a little bit here because there is a little rust on there. Take your new slider, put it over the top like this, and you push it down and right into position like that. And they just fit right over the top, fairly easy like that. Alright, then we're going to do is we're going to, those sliders we talked about, we're going to pull them out a little bit like this. Take them out one at a time, do them, because they have to go back into the same place they came out. Put a little bit of lubricant on each one of them, like this. You put it back in here, and you push it back in, and you make sure your boot comes back up to the top, and as you can see now, it slides nice and easy. Same thing on this one here, take it out, a little bit of lubricant on it, and you can put it back in. I'm sure you've seen people on YouTube and other places doing this where they don't lubricate this stuff. Take my word for it, I've been doing this for a long time. Lubricate it and you won't have a problem. Put it on dry and you're going to have a problem with it. Maybe not today, but in a short period of time you're going to. Alright, push it in, make sure it slides easy. Make sure your boot is back up on the top where it belongs. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit of brake lubricant and put it anywhere that the brake pad touches on the new hardware so that everything slides nice and easy. Same thing here. And then just put your pad in there just to make sure. Now when you previously took your brake pad off, make sure you find out where your indicator was on there, and you're going to put it back on the same way as it came off. Alright, this goes into the mounting knuckle like this. You turn it very sideways just a little bit. Put it in there. It's a little bit tight because everything is brand new. With the lubricant on there, it'll slide nice and easy. It's in here and it slides nice and easy just as it's supposed to. Same thing on the top, nice and easy. It fits snug, but it still moves. We'll do the same thing. You take your other brake pad, you put it on like this, just push it in very lightly on the top, and then you push it in here, and you just push it in. Turn it sideways a little bit. A little trick, as I always do, is put it in sideways a little bit like that, and once you're into the mounting hardware, you turn it sideways and it fits in there perfectly, and then it slides nice and easy just as it's supposed to. With the proper lubricant on there, it works perfectly. Alright, let's get back over to the car. Let's get this back, the rotor on, and we'll wrap this job up. Okay. Now we're going to put the rotor back on. Make sure you line it up with the holes, with the threaded holes that we're going to put the rotor screws back through. Alright, and you catch these with your screwdriver. Same thing on the other one. And tighten it up. Nice and tight. Okay. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the caliper mounting bracket that we previously installed our brake pads on, and we're going to take it and we're going to put it over the top like this. Slide it into position. And then squeeze your brake pads so that they don't pop out on you. Grab your two 17 millimeters that you previously took out. And you catch both of them in there before you tighten it up. Catch them both in there. Once you have them caught, you tighten them in as far as you can by hand. And then once you can't turn it anymore, you get in there with your ratchet and you tighten it down with your ratchet. Just watch your pads don't fall out, squeeze them back together. And you snug them both down before you tighten all the way. Turn them all the way in as far as you can, and then we'll tighten them up. Now we have them snug down. Now we're going to tighten the mounting bracket on. We're going to tighten the bottom one. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our caliper back on. Now remember, before, when we had that screwdriver in there, we pressed this piston all the way back in. Remember I told you about having this tool to press it back in. If by chance you needed to push the pistons back in with that tool, I'm going to show you how to do it. Let me grab the brake pads and I'll show you. If by chance it's not quite far enough in, you can take the set of brake pads and just put them in here like this, and you grab this tool, and this tool, you catch it in there first, and I'll show you how it goes. This is how that tool works. It squeezes the brake pad pistons, pushes that piston back into the bore right here. But in this case, it's already pushed in because we did it with the screwdriver. If you recall, that screwdriver pushes the piston back in, so it saves us from having to do this step here. But just in case you had to, you could do it with this tool here. But do it with the screwdriver, it'll save you a couple of minutes. All right, make sure you put the caliper back on the way you took it off. I've seen people already put the caliper back on with the brake hose twisted like this. Make sure it's not twisted. Make sure you put it on so that it's perfectly, show you, that is perfectly straight. There's no kinks or twists or anything in it. All right, then you push your caliper back on, and we're going to catch both of these screws that we previously took out. These are the 12 millimeters. Catch them both. Same thing on the bottom. Screw them in as far as you can by hand so you don't cross-thread them. Once you have them screwed in, then you just tighten up your mounting screws on the caliper. Let me show you something real quick. The slide pins, sometimes they will rotate on you. I'll show you what I mean. Not all the time, but sometimes. When you're on here with a ratchet trying to tighten it, well, in this case it's not turning, but if you were trying to turn this screw to make it tight here for the caliper, and this was not tightening up, sometimes you'd be turning it and it just keeps on turning. You would take a wrench and you would get in here with the wrench and you would hold the slide pin to keep it from turning. Let's see what happens on the bottom one. Okay, yeah, it is happening on the bottom one. You get a light in here and I'll show you what I mean. See down here? When you turn this, you see how that piece spins? You can't really tighten that screw up all the way. So what you would do is you would get on here with a wrench and just hold it with a wrench right here to keep it from turning. like this, and then you would tighten up your ratchet. I'm going to put this down and I'll show you what I mean. Now you can hold it, and it tightens up without a problem. Alright, so now you know everything is tight. Alright, let me just recap everything for you. We have our rotor mounted on. We put our 2 screws back into the rotor to hold it onto the hub. We have our mounting bracket on. We changed the hardware on the mounting bracket. We lubricated all the points where the pad touches. We lubricated the slide pins. We tightened up the 17mm bolts that hold the mounting bracket onto the car itself. And we tightened up the 12mm that hold the caliper to the mounting bracket. That's it. We're all set. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go around to the other side. We're going to go ahead and we're going to replace the brakes on the other side. And one thing you want to do is after you get the brakes done in here, you want to go into the car. You want to pump the brake pedal several times so that you can push this piston in here back out so that you have a nice firm pedal. That's it. You're all set. Passenger side first. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to be removing these springs that you see inside here. We're going to take everything off of here. And we're going to get started on it. So let me grab some tools. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean out all of this. As you can see, all of this debris inside here, we're going to clean this out. So let me get some cleaning solution, and we're going to get started, and we'll wrap this job up. The first thing we're going to do is, remember we talked about, we're going to clean off all of that debris inside here first. So you just spray it off. Make sure you have a bucket underneath to catch it. It's going to make a little bit of a mess. Spray everything down real good with the cleaner and get all of this brake dust off of here. Once you got it wet really well, then you can spray it a little bit harder. I always spray it very lightly just to get everything wet so that it's not all over the place. And then once you spray it lightly, then you can spray it a little heavy to get everything off. Right, so that cleans everything off that we're going to be working with. Alright. What I always do, because you're going to run into this problem, you're going to be working on it, and you're going to notice that this wheel cylinder is going to pop apart. As it sits there, these pieces of the cylinder are going to push out. What I always do is always pinch off the brake line very lightly. You can use vice grips and make a special tool for it, but you don't really need it. Just pinch off the line very lightly, enough to stop the fluid from flowing through, but not enough to cause damage to the line itself. Alright, so now we know that that cylinder is not going to slowly pop out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove these springs here. They make a whole bunch of different special tools for it, so whatever works for you. The way I usually do it is I use 2 different tools, 3 tools actually. Needle nose pliers to get the springs out that you can't get your fingers into. Cutting pliers, which is just to hold the spring and pull the spring out. You can use needle nose too, but I always use cutting pliers because it holds it a little tighter to pull the springs out. Because when you try to pull it and you have needle nose pliers on it, a lot of times you can get it out, but it slides off. So I work with these here. That's it. So we show you how to do it. What I always do first is take off the spring for the self-adjuster. Relocate this. If you're changing a spring kit, fine. If you're not, we're going to reuse it. We're going to remove that little lever that was on there that was holding that self-adjuster in place. We're going to relocate that. We're going to need to use that again too. Take a pair of pliers, grab your spring, and just push it to the front of the car, and you can pull it out at the same time. Let's try the back one. The back one did come out a lot easier. I'll show you what I did. Just grab it with the pliers right here, like this, and you're basically just pulling the spring to get it to pull out, and you have to take this piece out of that opening right there. Alright, so now If you remember how it goes, fine. If not, lay it down so you put it back on the same way. It's very important that this spring goes back on the exact way that it came off. It cannot go on this way because it'll interfere with the self-adjuster in the back there. So it came off this way, it has to go back on that way. All right? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these clips off right here to hold it in place. You basically just use a screwdriver. You take the screwdriver and you push on the clip, push it down. You hold your hand around the back and you keep that pin. The pin looks like a nail with a flat end on it. You just keep it from pushing back through the plate. You hold it here and you put this through at the same time and push it down on this, and you rotate the nail or pin in the back of it to to remove it. And I'll show you what that looks like. If you're going to reuse these, fine. If you're going to replace them, that's fine too. But basically what it is, it's a nail, and this piece here goes through there like that, and it turns sideways, and it keeps it from popping out. All right? I'm going to take that and relocate that. We're going to take this brake shoe, take it off like this. You have a spring down the bottom. Unhook that spring. Just turn it sideways and pull it right off. Now we know we're going to put that shoe back on with a new shoe. We're going to replace this spring here. Watch how you took it off. It came around this way here. You put it back on that way. Same thing over here. Now we're going to take this self-adjuster out. Remember how you took it out? You have different sizes in the back right here. The longer one is the one that faces outside to you. Then we're going to turn this all the way in. This one doesn't matter, it's the same. And we're going to turn this all the way back in so that we can accommodate the new shoes. All right, and then lay this down. We're going to need to reuse that also. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to push that in here, and we're going to take that other spring out the same way that we took the previous one out. You push it in, you rotate it from the back, you rotate that pin or the nail that's in the back there so that it can come out here. And then we just relocate that to the side. Take this here, you take it off the car, you rotate it sideways, and what we're going to do is we're going to unhook the parking brake from right here. You push it forward like this, push the spring forward, and it comes right out just like that. Right? And it comes right out. Now remember, you took it off like this, so this is the way you're going to put it back on. That's one way you can do it. I don't usually do it like that because you could take this over to the bench now and you could take this off right here. What I normally do, and I'll show you, is just leave this connected onto the car. You don't need to remove. You don't need to remove this from the car. You can leave it hanging just as way it is. We need to take that clip right there and open it up and remove it from the car. So you can take a screwdriver and you can just pry this clip open right here. Take off the U-shaped clip and you take out the washer, and now we're going to replace it. Okay, what you want to do is with the new shoe, you want to make sure that everything lines up, all the holes line up properly. And in this case, they do. All right, make sure the pad surface is the same. And then we're just going to take this piece out. And we're going to put it right back in to this one, the new one. And we're going to put it back through here. We're going to put a washer on that was previously on there. And then we're going to install the U-shaped clip that you just took off. And you can do that with a pair of pliers too. Once you have the U-shaped clip onto here like that, you grab a pair of pliers and you just squeeze it until it goes down where it previously came off. And once it's down as far as it can go, you hold it in with your thumb. You take a pair of either needle nose pliers or regular pliers, whatever works for you. And you get in there and you squeeze it closed so that it won't reopen. Now you squeezed it closed. Now before we go any further, we're going to lubricate everything so that it turns the way it's supposed to and slides just as it's supposed to also. All right, what we're going to do is I always do this myself, is take this off right here and squeeze the wheel cylinder back in with your hands. Makes it a little easier later on for you. Then replace your pliers on the line, keeps it from pushing out all the way. Then what you need to do is you need to lubricate the backing plate wherever the brake shoe touches. You want to lubricate everything, including where it mounts onto the bottom here. Same thing on here. Okay. Once you have it lubricated, then what you do is you take your shoe, you rotate it, put it back up where it previously came out. Make sure your spring for your parking brake cable is up on top of that bracket that it came off of. Put your shoe in place. Put your pin through the back. And what you're going to do is you take your clip that you previously took off. You put it on there like this. You take your screwdriver and you push it back in and you rotate that pin in the back. I'm going to show you how that pin is supposed to line up. See how it's turned sideways to the opening? The opening is straight up and down, and the pin turns sideways. It keeps it from moving. All right, make sure your brake pad is in your caliper. I'm sorry, not your caliper. When you see the wheel cylinder, you see that slot in the wheel cylinder right here? Make sure your brake pad lines up in there as this one does. All right? Okay, next thing we're going to do is you have your adjuster. Put your adjuster back in the way that you took it out. You grab your new shoe now. Take your spring that you previously took out from the bottom here, put it back in the way you took it out, hook your brake pad onto it like that, and then you rotate it and you bring it up like this, and you push the adjuster up very slightly so that the adjuster fits into the groove on the brake shoe. And you're going to put your pin back through this side here. And we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other side. Put our spring on here like this. You're going to push your spring in as far as you can. And put your pin back through there. Okay? Now, make sure your adjuster is all the way in the way it's supposed to be. We're just going to let these push in a little again. That's where it belongs. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall that longer spring. Remember the one that we took out? We're putting it back in the same way that it came out. Hook it up in the front, pull it down to the bottom here, take your pliers. Again, you're just holding it, you're not pulling it real tight because you don't want to cut through the spring. And you take it and you put it back where it previously came out of in the same hole, right? Now by now I'm sure you're probably saying to yourself, what the did I get myself into? This is more difficult than I thought. Take your time. If you lose your patience, walk away and come back to it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put back our self-adjuster that we previously took out. It was in that hole, so we're going to put it right back in that hole again. And remember that this piece here fits up against the adjuster. So put it in there, and you just slide it back until you feel it pop in. If it doesn't pop in, and it goes right back in the way it came out, where the lever is behind the self-adjuster. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put our spring back in. Hook your spring back in where it came out. And then we're going to pull our spring down, and we're going to put it back through. Sorry if I'm blocking you. Grab your spring with your pliers, pull it down, and hook it back in. All right, and you'll take your pliers off the line. And if you did everything right, you should have no leftover parts, and everything should have gone together the way it's supposed to. Let me just recap a couple of very important things to you here. You want to make sure your springs are in all the way where they're supposed to be. Make sure these pins are turned sideways to the opening of the hole. Make sure this spring is down underneath that little tab right there that holds it in place. Your wheel cylinders are lined up in the slot the way it's supposed to. And last, you want to make sure that your self-adjuster is where it belongs, which it is. And here we have the self-adjuster lever right behind the adjuster as it's supposed to. Okay. Now after you've got the whole thing back together, you need to adjust the brakes once you put it on. There is an adjustment slot in the back, all the way back. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it back here, but there is a slot down right here that you can take out, and you get in there with a screwdriver to adjust it, or a tool to adjust it. The problem is, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in the way here. You can't get in there to make a good adjustment on this. So I'm going to show you the way that I do the adjustment on it, and it's the way you can do it also. All right, obviously we're going to put the drum back on before we can adjust it and see how much to adjust it. Now, just for the record too, I did resurface the drum. I would recommend you get it resurfaced also. If you can't do it, have a machine shop or a auto supply store cut it for you, or if you change it. You have to have a good surface to make a good adjustment. All right, get the drum back on, and you'll see that the drum doesn't fit. And the reason for that is because this just has to be adjusted just slightly up and down to accommodate the drum. Now you see it goes on nice and smooth. Fold the drum face against it and turn it. You can see it's pretty free and it turns quite a bit. Take the drum back off the bar, and then you come in here with the screwdriver, and you can adjust the star adjuster right through this opening right here. And you can just turn it, and you'll be able to adjust the brakes. And you'll hear it clicking. Just do it a little bit, a couple of turns, Maybe you'll get the adjuster out, maybe 1, maybe 2 revolutions. And once you have it out a little bit, you take your drum again, and you put your drum on, and you see, now is it any tighter? Just a little bit, but it still needs to be adjusted. You can see by the movement of the drum it needs, to be adjusted. And you just continue with that, adjusting it. I don't know if you can see too well, but just keep adjusting it until. Now they do sell a special tool for this to adjust it, but if you do it this way here, you won't need to purchase any special tools or rent anything. It's the same thing. It's a caliper that goes on the outside here, measures the distance of the shoes here, and then it measures the drum, and you adjust it according to that. But you could do it this way here is fine. All right, put it back on again, and we can feel it get a little bit softer. Put it on, turn it, still spins. And what you should have drag on. You should be able to get it to rotate 1 revolution before it stops. I'm going to adjust it again. What I always do is hold the brake shoes so they don't move that much when you're adjusting it. Much better now. You should be able to get 1 revolution out of it without it really dragging, and that's how it should be adjusted.